Now we take chapter 11. Now, chapter 11, the theme of that would be 2 menacing witnesses and 3 woes and 7 trumpets. So we've got a lot to cover in this chapter. So let's get started.
Revelation 11. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying,
Rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months.
So we see there is going to be another temple built. And, there are a lot of people who say, well, how are they going to build the temple? I can't tell you exactly how they're going to build the temple. And when you look at it now, the Muslims control so much area of the Temple Mount. You just don't know how it's going to happen, but it will happen. This will be built for the purpose of fulfilling prophecy of the Antichrist, who will defile it. The Antichrist is going to look like the good guy. He's actually going to broker the deal. He's going to tell the Muslims or whatever, listen, let's go ahead and let them do that. And the Jews are going to say, wow, this guy's pretty good as far as the Antichrist. But he does not want this built so that they can worship God like they think. It's so that he himself can be worshiped in there. So he'll let the Jews build the whole thing. He's sitting back. They think he's a great guy. And then one day he walks in and he desecrates the house of God. Did Jesus predict another temple would be built? When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, who readeth, let him understand. And then it says, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offerings, and on the wing of an abomination shall be one who maketh desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out of the desolation. The Jews will be deceived, believing that the Antichrist is pro-Jew for negotiating the building and the temple that will be built where he will be worshiped, obviously. They do not know his real reason is to declare he is God and should be worshiped. Listen to this. Who opposes and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he is as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So they're building this temple saying, oh man, this is going to be great. We'll be able to worship God. They do not have a clue that the reason why it's being built is so that he can declare himself God in that. You see, Jesus made 2 predictions about the temples. One, the temple of his day would be destroyed, Matthew 24, 1 and 2. And then the second temple, that temple would be the place for the Antichrist to defile. As you look in the Bible, again, unless you understand the Old Testament, you just don't understand Revelation. And that's what's so confusing to people, because he makes reference to the Old Testament, and if you don't understand that, then you won't understand. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing both of them together. For example, like this, Daniel is the key to understanding the book of Revelation. It says in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, but thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Well, we know those things have come to pass. We have high-speed travel, and we have knowledge like we've never had before. You see, Daniel predicted high-speed travel as well as an increase in knowledge, and we see that today. Daniel predicts the rebuilding of the third temple as well. In Daniel chapter 11, verse 31, His armies will take over the temple fortress, pollute the sanctuary, put a stop to the daily sacrifices, and set up the sacrilegious objects that cause desecration. So now we see that Daniel actually predicts that this is going to happen. And the Bible also says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4, he will exalt himself and defile everything that people call God, and every object of worship. He will even sit in the temple of God, claiming that he himself is God. Now, I'd like to take a little second and do a little segment entitled God's News Beyond the News, Finding the Red Heifer. Finding the red heifer, what is that all about? Well, there must be a temple built for the Antichrist to sit in, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. So he that is as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself to be God. Well, the temple also needs a lot of things to happen. This is from the Temple Institute. If you're going to have a temple to worship, you have to find the high priest. Now, this is quite amazing. Science News, July 14th, 1998, priestly genes shared by widely dispersed Jews. Accordingly, since the Jewish priesthood designation is transmitted from the father to the son, the DNA of the founding ancestors is reflected in the Y chromosome, makers of the modern-day Jewish priest. And it goes on to say this: scientists have discovered a gene which can be traced from the biblical figure of Aaron, the first high priest, Cohen, of the Jewish people, to a segment of the Jewish population today that carries the priestly lineage. So now they've been dispersed all over the world. Jews have been all over the world. How do you literally find the high priest? And by the way, DNA was discovered by a Jew. So why do we have the DNA today? Is it just so that you can go into a doctor's office and he can say, oh, you're sick because your mother was sick, you have diabetes because your dad had diabetes, you have... No, the reason for DNA and its discovery was to find the high priest. Not only that, but they have their own garments. They also have the instruments that will be used in the new temple. And here we see they have the golden table of the showbread, the copper water basin. The copper wash basin must have purified water for the priest to wash their hands and feet. And you'll see that there is a spigot down there. There is actually 12 spigots, one for each of the tribes. There's one thing that is needed to purify the water. Just one thing. What is it? The ashes of the red heifer. Now, according to Jewish tradition, it says that there have been 9 red heifers offered throughout history. The Jews believe the 10th red heifer will be a sign of the soon coming of their Messiah. Now, you have to understand, I've seen a lot of red cows, but this red cow is different. They've been looking for this red heifer for over 2,000 years. Now, this is an article that says, does the arrival of 5 red heifers in Israel signal the third temple and end times? The 5 cows bred by a Christian rancher in the United States landed in Israel on Thursday, September 15th, 2022. And this is what the article says. 5 rabbi-approved red heifers arrived from Texas on Thursday to a ceremonial welcome at the Ben Gurion Airport and touched off a whirlwind of speculation as the prophetic significance of their presence in Israel and whether we are barreling towards the third temple period or the last days. And then we see this. The cows have been inspected by the rabbis and were found to be red and unblemished, which means they are ritually pure for sacrifice as stipulated under the law of Moses. In order for someone following the Mosaic law to become ritually pure, the ashes of the red heifer are required according to the book of Numbers. Numbers 19, verse 2 says this, "This is the requirements of the law that the Lord hath commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, or that has never been under a yoke." So this red heifer is needed to purify the water. And they've been looking for this red heifer for 2,000 years. And all of a sudden, we find that there are 5 of them in Israel. It needs to be completely red. Even 2 hairs of different colors next to each other, or 3 that are far apart, disqualify it. Not only that, but they cannot have any blemishes. They could never have a yoke placed on them. They cannot have ever mated, and they must be at least 2 years old. These calves are 1 year old now. So folks, what did it say? It said that when that red heifer is found, the Jews will believe that their Messiah is coming. Boy, that's exciting. Now, God has to have a sense of humor, because he stops the whole building of the temple for a cow. Until they find that cow, they cannot purify themselves. If they can't purify themselves, they can't offer up sacrifices. And that's what the temple is for. Interesting enough, when you look at this picture, one of these 5 cows could be the first qualifying red heifer to be found in over 2,000 years. That's my God's news beyond the news. So let's move on as we start to look at the 2 witnesses of Revelation chapter 11.
"And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth.
These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth, and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed."
How long do they prophesy? According to Revelation chapter 3, they prophesy for 3.5 years. "I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, that they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth." There are several options here. One is Moses and Elijah, Enoch and Elijah, and 2 unnamed witnesses. The first option, Elijah and Moses. 2 strong arguments for Moses and Elijah. They appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration together. The miracles in the Old Testament are associated with the miracles in Revelation. Elijah stopped the rain, and Moses turned the water into blood. And in Revelation chapter 11, verse 6,
"These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will."
That's going to be pretty bad. You know, they'll be able to release plagues like the bubonic plague. We're not talking about COVID now. We're talking about plagues that really are serious, and they're able to release them. And the Bible also says, "And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth." These men are not human flamethrowers. The witnesses can call down fire against their enemies. Well, that happened before. In 2 Kings chapter 1, verse 12, it says this, "Elijah called down fire upon his enemies. Elijah replied, 'If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and destroy you and the 50 men.' And again, the fire of God fell from heaven and killed all of them." So we see that it's not like they go, "I don't like you," and all of a sudden fire. No, they're able to call down fire. And I believe they could call it down anywhere. I mean, That's the reason why it's going to be a universal thing. It's not just going to be in Jerusalem. They're going to have problems all over the world with this. The second option is Enoch and Elijah. Enoch and Elijah never died. The Bible says that it is appointed a man once to die. These two prophets never died. But they will die at the hand of the Antichrist. Now, the problem with that is this. Enoch and Elijah are the only two people in heaven that have not died currently. This happens after the rapture, so millions of people in heaven will have never died. When we come back in our next session, we'll talk about the third option.